Okay, and welcome everybody to this next module. Kind of continuing on what we were talking about in the previous couple sections with measurement tools. We're going to kind of continue the technical thinking side of the Lean Concepts program, and what we're going to get into in the next couple sections is going to be that second question in terms of technical tools, right? The tools to improve. Because what we're going to be working on is developing some of those skills to go with our understanding and help us develop that lean transformation that we're working towards. So the first couple tools that we're going to be going over, we're going to take a review of stability, problem solving, which was covered in a separate module, but we're just going to hit again on kind of how it ties into what we're talking about here. Then we'll get into standardized work, we'll have a discussion on judoka, and then the last one we're going to hit before moving on to some other tools is going to be a review, and I'll take a look at this concept of hijunka. So the first one we're going to look at is stability. That's important. It's the foundation of what we're going to be doing. And really, when we start talking about stability, one of the first things we need to address and understand is that we're really talking in a lot of cases about a cultural change in the basic way we think about what is normal and what is not normal. And so in a lot of places that we go in, this kind of traditional thinking where you have maybe an individual working in a process, they're behind, they're overwhelmed, you've got inventory piled up, things half done, you've got problems, and everyone's just a little bit overwhelmed, kind of scrambling to try and keep ahead. So, too many fires to put out. People don't really feel like they have any control over what's going on, and the end result of that is, people decide that certain things aren't their responsibility. And what we really want to do is get away from that into a lean model, where everyone working in their processes, they have a clear understanding of what's normal, what's not, when problems show up. They have ways to call for help. Management is structured to provide a quick response. We covered that in the management module. And then through problem solving and application of some of the skills and tools that we're going to be talking about in these sections, we can put countermeasures into place quickly and with a sense of urgency. And that's really the cultural shift that we want to get to in terms of being able to develop and maintain stable work processes. And so when we look at problems and how they impact stability, really the core thinking there is that any type of problem causes instability. It makes things take longer, things go faster, there's issues, we don't meet our deadlines, right? Any potential problem contributes negatively to our ability to maintain a stable work process. So here's just a list of sample problems. So it could be, equipment failure or rework or people being absent, training issues, whatever it could be. The important thing that we want to take out of this is that no matter what our problems are, we can always categorize them. And we want to categorize them to help us be able to break them apart and understand what's really going on and help us kind of get our hands around these things as categories without being overwhelmed by the sheer number of individual problems. And so the ones we're going to focus on, these are just a template. Again, I encourage everyone to develop different categories that suit whatever the particular application is. But at the very minimum, we look at this idea of man, material, method, and machine. And to just kind of flesh that out a little bit further, examples of man problems, human problems are, good work habits, bad work habits, if people are trained properly, low turnover. The machine is a little bit self-explanatory. We want our machines to work with no breakdowns and are maintained well and they don't make bad parts. For material, that's if we're ordering things from a vendor or internal in-process stock that we're developing. We don't want defects or shortages, and we certainly don't want the wrong parts being delivered. And then the last one, method, in a lot of respects can be the most important. And what that really deals to is, do we have good processes? Do people understand their roles? Do we have good, effective management? And do we have ownership and accountability in what we're trying to accomplish? Right? So more or less we try and break out any particular problem we get into these different categories so we can kind of really get a better feel for what's going on. And so in a traditional sense, when we have these types of problems, man problems, method problems, whatever they are, to account for those, generally what we'll do is we'll maintain a large inventory. We'll just add a warehouse full of parts because we know things go wrong. And we want to make sure that if we have enough stuff sitting in the side, that our customers always get what they want, because we don't want them to be shorted. At the same time, we can add more shifts or work overtime because we have problems that we're not fixing, so we can't get enough done in one day, so we'll just work more, right? And then that's the same thing with purchasing more equipment. We can't realize the full potential of the equipment we have, or we don't even know that we're not, so we want to go and just purchase more equipment, immediately just defaulting to we need more. And then again down there, things not being people's problem, right? Well, it's not my problem. I don't have time. I can't get to it. We just need to hire another person to do this. Kind of the common thread there is the typical traditional kind of knee-jerk reaction or way to think about accounting for instability is adding more capacity. We need more people or equipment. We need to work more. We need more inventory to account for this and cover this up. And what we want to do with lean thinking is we want to move away from that, because that notion of adding capacity and maintaining more capacity than we actually need is a huge source of waste. And so to get rid of it, we want to transition the way we think and the way we are culturally to this idea of abnormality management, which really has a couple key elements. The first one being we actually want to expose our problems and bring them to the surface. We want to know what these problems are. We don't want to just cover them up by getting more capacity. We want to see what they are. Then we actually want to find the real root cause. We've discussed this a little bit in the problem-solving module. We don't want to just throw a Band-Aid on it or give it our best guess. We want to really understand what's going on and fix it permanently. And then that last idea there is we want to fix problems one by one as we go through. And the key point out of there is, we can't really do everything at once. So what we want to do is identify one critical problem, understand it, solve it, fix it before moving on to something else. And that's really how we address the issue with too many fires, right? Just one at a time so that we can be sure that we're always making progress. And so this is kind of a way to represent graphically what we were just talking about, the differences between traditional and lean thinking in terms of managing stability. And so if we take that white line to just be customer demand, and the green column is our ideal capacity. So in an ideal world, we could produce exactly what the customer wants. That yellow bar there is our actual capacity on first shift. So because of problems or issues that we're having, we're not actually able to meet that true customer demand. Now the traditional thinking there is, well, if we can't do it on one shift, let's just add a second shift. That way we meet our demand, we're producing as much as we need, and our customer will be happy. Well, that's great, but that's a lot of waste to add in for an entire second shift. So what we want to do with lean thinking is we want management to work to understand what those problems are. Why aren't we able to reach our maximum capacity? Well, why do we feel like we need to just add a second shift? And what ends up happening with that is we want to be able to break that gap down into kind of those component problem areas. Like we said, break it into man, material, method, and machine. Understand how each one of these is contributing to our overall problem gap. And then we want to break down those problems, and we want to prioritize them, and we want to make them manageable, and then we want to solve them one by one to slowly close the gap between our actual capacity and our ideal capacity. That's what we're working towards with this lean understanding of stability. But, that's easier said than done, and in the real world that's difficult to do because there are some cultural barriers to being able to eliminate these problems. We talked a little bit about them before, this idea of it not my responsibility, it's their responsibility, or people don't feel like they have the ability to control and impact these problems. And then of course people being overwhelmed. There's just too much to do, too many things are going wrong, too many things to solve, we'll never make progress. And what we do in the lean world is we use our practical problem-solving module, pulled directly from the problem-solving module. The reason we review it here in stability is because we cannot maintain a stable process if we can't solve the problems that we're finding. So, just as a quick review, what that model is we want to be able to take our large, vague problems, break them down into a finite, narrow point of cause that we can actually do something about. And it's important to remember that we do that by going and seeing. We don't stand in our office or we don't ask around. We actually go and see what's happening in real time, in current condition, on the floor to make sure we're chasing the right carrot there. And then the back half is once we've identified that point of cause, we want to do a thorough root cause analysis, our 5 why analysis. And the goal there being we want to understand why it's happening and also why it's being passed. Why isn't it being fixed when it's happening? Why is it being sent down the line? Because when we understand those two things, then we're in the best position to actually come up with fixes that are going to permanently solve the root of the problem. So, kind of taking all that in together and looking at a very high level in terms of why stability matters, there's 2 main things to consider. And the first one is that stability, as we mentioned before, is really the foundation of lean. Because if we don't have stable, repeatable processes, we can't build these higher level functions on top of it. If things are always changing, if conditions are always unpredictable, we have no way to measure what we're doing. We have no way to see if things are getting better or getting worse. So we have to establish some level of baseline stability that we can maintain before moving forward. So in a lot of ways, it's the first step in the lean transformation. And the second key point is, with stability, now when we make an improvement, we can sustain that improvement, with our goal being that through stability we can have our actual production capacity be equal to our ideal production capacity, that 100% operational availability, going back to the concepts from philosophy, 100% efficiency, right? With stability, we can sustain that once we reach it. And then there's also a couple of other measurable and immeasurable benefits that come out of stability and stable processes as well. The measurables, are pretty obvious. So customer satisfaction, your customer is always getting what they want. They don't have to hear, of issues and problems. You're reliable and consistent. Again, the operational and efficiency increases and things that we can sustain. And then the last one there is cost reduction. And that's something that once you think about it becomes obvious. Maybe not initially, but when we have a stable process, we don't have the downtime associated with problems. We don't have the waste. We don't have the scrap. We don't have the production shortages. We don't have to work the overtime or the weekends. So there's a lot of money and cost to be saved by being able to be stable in the way we produce. On the immeasurable side, things that really come out of it, and this more relates to kind of changing the culture and shifting the culture. When we're establishing stability, because it requires teamwork and people to be engaged and involved, we're building the communication skill of the entire organization. And in that same vein, once that starts happening, once people are becoming more engaged, we find that the willingness to be involved and the effort towards solving problems increases dramatically. And then that all ties into being able to develop our human resource. Now we have a mechanism by which people can become engaged to level up their own skills to become more confident in their day-to-day routines, which is a net win for the organization culturally and in terms of the bottom line. So that covers kind of the stability review. As always, direct questions through the website, and we will see everybody back for the next section. Thank you.